This is Hot Mic.
Hot Mic
On the networks of WDAY.
WDAY.
Here's Dom Izzo.
Welcome back, everybody. Hour 2, ready to rock and roll on this Monday morning. You know, if you missed it late last week, North Dakota State Thursday night, I want to say, got its latest football commit for the class of 2026. Again, in the state of Wisconsin, which they have harvested that clearly throughout the Division I years, but certainly since Tim Polasek has come back as head coach, the native Wisconsinite that he is, the Bison have nailed, especially on offensive line. They got two monsters out of the state of Wisconsin last year, and they got another on Thursday night from Pewaukee, Wisconsin. Tucker Thieneman announced his commitment to the Bison. His head coach joins us here this morning. Justin Friske is the leader of the Pewaukee football team, and he joins us now. We appreciate the time, Coach. We were visiting off air a little bit, and I know we talked late last week on so I'll ask you the best way to describe it, because we see the Bison get guys they're beating out FBS. They don't beat out Florida and Ole Miss. How much of a big deal is this for Bison fans about a player that's going to come up here next year?
I mean, I think everyone should be really excited about it. Tucker is over the moon. He can't wait. He obviously has some priorities with our program coming up here in this coming fall. But beyond that, I think the folks up in Fargo should be very excited about Tucker being a part of the program. He is an absolute rock star kid, really great human being. And as an offensive lineman, I think he's got the right amount of intelligence and nastiness to really flourish in Tim's system. And I know that, Tim loves him for the fact that he brings a lot to the table and how Tim wants to play. And I'm not sure that there's a kid that's better suited for the style that the Bison play and has the right temperament as well.
We have some highlights we're going to roll during our conversation, and he's a huge figure, but he's pancaking guys. For you coach him all the time. Give us the temperament of what kind of football player he is and why he was so coveted, Justin, for Power 4 schools.
Well, I think he's a unique combination of athleticism and size, and one of the things that I'm not even sure the tape really reflects is how much better athletically he is getting. What we see on film is him coming off of a summer where he gained probably 50 pounds to a frame that was 250. And so he's still figuring out how to use his body and the leverage that he brings with, 300, 305 to the table. So I'm not sure that the ceiling is even close to being touched with Tucker. But as far as the temperament is concerned, we appreciate the fact that he comes to practice every day willing to fight and wanting to maybe mix it up more than even we're comfortable with. He does bring an edge to his game that is really appropriate and I think necessary for him to succeed at our level and then in the next level. I feel like, lots of programs say that they are a certain way, and then there are a few programs who are what they say they are. The one thing I really appreciate about NDSU over the years, and this is when Coach Polasek was the O coordinator, and then when he stepped away, and now that he's back, they've never really wavered in their identity. And their identity is, we're going to line up and we're going to mash you. And if you want to fight, we're going to fight. And Tucker is exactly the kind of kid that wants that kind of football, and I think that kind of a locker room culture.
I visited with him about NDSU's offensive line pedigree, which goes without saying that there's 5 straight left tackles that have going to be drafted into the National Football League. How much, in your mind, how big a deal was that, Justin, that the offensive line history at this school played into him coming up here?
Well, without a doubt, it played a major role. I think the thing that we talk about with our kids all the time is that the recruiting process is a lot like the dating process, right? You need to feel really good about who you are talking to and who you are around and surrounded by, but also they've got to love you as much as you love them. And in this process, I think what ended up coming back day in and day out was, I love it when I go to Fargo. And every time I go on a visit anywhere else, I'm comparing it to how I feel when I leave Fargo. And no matter where he went, none of the places measured up to Fargo. And that says a lot about the culture there, the commitment, the community, the campus, and the coaching staff and the players really giving him a great understanding of what it's like. Top that off with NDSU is a place that you go if you want to play professional football. there aren't that many programs that can say that, right? And for NDSU to be able to say we produce pros, all the more solidified in Tucker's mind and in his family's mind the right fit and the place that he wanted to be.
As a head coach, how much are you fielding questions from colleges about him? How often are you on the phone, especially when the big schools, the SEC and the Big Ten, are coming into the picture?
Well, the recruiting game has changed so much even in the last 5 years. A lot of this stuff is like entry level. They talk to me for a minute and then they really dive in on the kid. And so we're not as involved as maybe we were 5 or 10 years ago, but I still feel really good about programs that want to use the head coach, not so much as a gatekeeper, but maybe as an initial entry point. And so I field my fair share, but it's not to the extent of how it used to be. And in the era of the portal, in the era of NIL, there are third and fourth party individuals that are trying to get themselves involved in this process as well. And I feel for the college guys because it's probably as big a mystery of who you should be talking to as much as what you should be saying. So I give most programs, I give a lot of credit to if they talk to me first, and then I kind of let the process play out, because what I like to do is go back to Tucker and the other kids who are being recruited and say, how do you feel about school X, school Y, school Z? And then if we're starting to get serious, right, if that dating is starting to heat up a little bit, and now we maybe want to go steady, then I might involve myself slightly more just to get a feel for what that coaching staff is and who they're and what they're about. And I'm lucky I've been around long enough now. I have a pretty good feel for a lot of people because I've had previous experiences. The one thing I'll say is, like, I've had great experiences with Tim. I've had great experiences with Dan Larson. I've had great experiences with Dylan Chimura. I mean, all three of those guys have recruited this school in different capacities over the years. And so the familiarity with those people as people first and then coaches second, I think really is a feather in the cap for NDSU, because we have great familiarity. We have a comfort level, and ultimately they treat people the right way. And Tucker felt that.
You're in it. So for people that don't follow, I follow the recruiting game. I'm a nerd for it. I love it. But the state of Wisconsin, just with Madison, how fertile of a ground is it where you're seeing teams from all over try to get in there because there's just the one Division I program there?
Well, it's a big deal because Madison is the only scholarship school. So we have an incredible Division III level league. The WIAC, I think, is as good or better than any league top to bottom in the nation in terms of relative competition. And to be frank, the top half of that league can play with and beat many Division II schools on a weekly basis. So it's not like we don't have great schools for kids to go to, but if we're looking at scholarship opportunities, it's a little bit harder, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like we also produce people of a certain size in Wisconsin that aren't necessarily common in other parts of the world. So we do get a lot of interest for offensive linemen specifically because it's just, it's our gene pool a little bit. Bob Bostad, the old line coach at Indiana, was up in the winter window, and we were just having that conversation. Now he's coached at Madison. He's now at IU, and he was saying, you cross the border from Illinois into Wisconsin and the kids look different. And he's right. There are just a different size of kid in Wisconsin that are a little bit untapped in some ways. And I think we're seeing more and more people trying to get into Wisconsin, even if they're putting out feelers to see what type of response they're going to get. And North Dakota State for years has been ahead of the curve. I don't see them losing any ground because they now have an incredible brand and they have a tradition of great quality football programs and development of kids that really doesn't, holds a candle to nobody. They are up there with everyone that you can compare them to.
The fact you're the head coach of the alma mater of where the Watt brothers played, how big a deal is that for you personally? That's where they're from and they played high school football there.
Well, it's great. I mean, I got a chance to coach TJ. And Derek, now that he's retired, has been around helping out. He's been a little bit of a volunteer with our special team stuff. And, the impact that JJ had just in putting this town on the map, it's great. And, it's interesting. We have a little bit of a connection with Madison because Chris McIntosh is probably the first big timer to come out of Pewaukee. And now he's the athletic director at UW. Yeah. So we have all of those things, going for us. we're a smaller school in an area that has a lot of bigger schools, and we play a lot against them a lot. And it's always nice when a kid from our place can say, hey, I'm as good as or better than a lot of you guys from your bigger schools, and keep that tradition going. And I think for Tucker, we couldn't be happier. We're so excited for him. He's fired up. He can't wait to become a Bison, but he also is really looking forward to being as good as he can be this coming year for us.
So you're telling me when like Florida and Ole Miss were calling you, that wasn't that big a deal because you've had other big time phone calls before?
No, I wouldn't say that. We don't get a lot of SEC traffic here as a rule. We're geographically a little isolated from the kind of kids that they typically recruit, but some of the calls were kind of out of the blue.
I bet.
To be honest, like Ole Miss called on a game day Friday, and it was like 4:30 in the afternoon, and I actually had to Google search the dude just to make sure it wasn't a prank. Those are interesting conversations when they kind of come out of nowhere, but on the same token, it's great, and it's a credit to Tucker, right? I mean, he's the one that's gotten the accolades and gotten the interest, and it's due to his talent and his work ethic and clearly his production. So we're excited to have a kid like Tucker in our program for sure. We're really fortunate. He's such a good person on top of being a really good player, and we're fired up for him and looking forward to having a great summer and hopefully an even better fall of 25.
I got to go back to the recruiting talk on this because the Bison actually faced J.J. Watt when he was at Central Michigan, and he wasn't obviously the J.J. Watt we all know. How in the world did Wisconsin not recruit this kid out of high school? Like, I still don't understand that he went to Central Michigan and then eventually got there.
Well, in fairness to Madison, they did. They recruited him out of high school. Unlucky for JJ, in his senior year, he got mono and he missed camp. And so there was a couple of other kids in the state at the time who ended up playing for and being really good players at Wisconsin as well, that JJ was competing for that last scholarship spot, right? And so JJ got sick and his window kind of closed on him and they didn't get a chance to really see him. So, I believe, knowing JJ and having watched him a little bit in high school, I was not coaching at Pewaukee at the time, so I saw him from a distance. Had he been able to go to camp right away and had he been able to compete, he probably wouldn't have had the story that he now has. But all's well that ends well. I think it adds to the legend that is JJ Watt. So here's an individual that overcame some difficulties and made the best of it, clearly. So we like to use it as an opportunity to reinforce the idea that it isn't where you start, it's where you finish, and you make the most of the opportunities you're given. And so, luckily for all of us, it's a great story we can tell now. Selling pizzas and all the rest of it, and delivery boy, and he was never going to stay a delivery boy for long, I can tell you that.
My last thing for you, just on Tucker now, as we get ready for his upcoming senior, your 2025 season. How big a deal is this to have this over and done with? So you've been around that sometimes kids want to get it done now. Sometimes they want to get done for their senior year. Sometimes it drags into their senior year. Have you noticed any advantage of getting it done beforehand to clear things out before their final season of high school football?
I do think it's dependent on the kid. And I do think it depends on, how much they enjoy this recruiting process and the dance that is the recruiting process, right? As long as it doesn't affect them in terms of their focus or their mental health, because it can really wear on a kid. I think it needs to take however much time it takes. And we're always here to kind of guide and help the kid make some decisions in the midst of it. If his family has questions, et cetera, that's what we're here for. And some things are not as clear as others. And so it needs to take more time to play out, whether that's the individual, the kid, or the schools that they're involved with. There's lots of variables that are kind of in the air. For Tucker, I think that he was ready to be comfortable with where he wanted to be. And I think, honestly, in his heart of hearts, he knew that NDSU was the place that made him feel best and the place that he wanted to be ultimately. And there is a lot to be said about all of the other schools and all of the things that they offer. But when it came down to what Tucker wanted academically, where he felt comfortable personally, and where he wanted to develop as a player, there was no place that hit all of those targets like NDSU did. And so what was the point of prolonging a process that in his mind he had already been exhausted by, but further didn't have any options that looked better. And NDSU plays an incredibly challenging schedule. They play TV games. They are ultimately fighting for championships almost every single year. Like, you're not going to play a better level of football than what NDSU plays week in and week out anywhere else in the nation in an environment that's going to support and nurture a kid like NDSU does. And so when he and his family sat down and weighed the pros and the cons of prolonging the process, waiting for other offers, etc., none of that really was that intriguing or that enticing to keep him from saying, I want to be where I want to be. So for Tucker, huge upside to say, this is where I want to be and we're done with this. Other kids, it might be a little bit longer for a lot of reasons. But I do think for Tucker specifically, best case scenario for him, for NDSU, and for Pewaukee football as well.
Justin, this was awesome. I really appreciate you making time for us this morning. Congratulations and good luck this upcoming fall, okay?
Thanks, Dom. Really appreciate it. Good luck to you guys up there as well.
Tucker Thieneman's high school head coach, Justin Friske, joining us here this morning from Pewaukee, Wisconsin. Thieneman, of course, is the fourth commit for the Bison class of 2026. We'll break. Got a few emails to get in and a couple other things. I neglected something on Best of the Weekend. Not too late. We got a late nominee to add to that. We'll show you that much more when Hot Mike returns on a Monday morning. We're back after this.